Beneath the blazing Colorado sun, a young black man, about 19, tall but slender, sweat glistening on his neck, and the laces of his worn work boots trailing in the dust, stepped off the gravel shoulder toward a stranded Porsche. "You look like you've been out here all day," he said, squinting kindly. Behind her sunglasses, Sienna Taylor, a young self-made millionaire, was more surprised than alarmed. "I've been here long enough to hate every cactus within 5 meters," she replied, brushing a strand of hair from her flushed cheek. The boy chuckled, his laughter gentle and genuine. "Mind if I take a look?" he offered. Out here, 30 minutes outside Grand Junction with no phone signal and a shredded rear tire, Sienna didn't have many options. Their eyes met, his calm and clear, unbothered by the luxury logo on her car or the designer shoes she'd scuffed trying to walk back to the last gas station. She gave a brief nod. He unslung his worn canvas pack, the zipper groaning open to reveal a pair of well-used work gloves and a compact, heirloom, quality toolkit. "Got a spare?" he asked, already dropping to a knee beside the compromised tire. "In the boot, I think," she replied, stepping aside. With a practiced flick, he unlatched the trunk, retrieved the spare, and began working without another word. Sienna cross-folded her arms, leaning against the car, her gaze fixed. There was a quiet poetry in his movements, the absence of wasted motion, the rhythmic tightening of bolts, the way the late afternoon sun gilded the dark curls clinging to his temple. "You do this often?" she finally ventured. "Occasionally," he murmured, not looking up. "My uncle owned a garage in town. Taught me everything before he passed." The words hung in the air, quieting her. A few more precise turns of the wrench and he rose, wiping his hands on his denim-clad thigh. "All set." Sienna reached for her purse. "Let me." He raised a hand, stepping back. "No need, ma'am. Glad I was on this road today." Her fingers froze, half buried in the soft leather of her clutch. "He doesn't want payment. I've got what I need," he stated simply, slinging his pack over a shoulder. She wasn't sure what astonished her more, his quiet proficiency or his steadfast refusal. "Your name?" "Jaden," he replied. "Jaden Brooks." "You?" As Sienna, she offered, almost reluctantly. "Sienna Taylor." He gave a single nod, a brief, genuine smile, then turned and began walking up the road, his shadow stretching long and lean across the cracked asphalt. That night, Sienna sat on the sprawling balcony of her family's mountain retreat, a glass of warming wine in her hand, her phone vibrating unheeded beside her. She ignored the endless pings, her publicist, her ex-fiancé, the board members who'd ousted her 3 weeks prior. Her thoughts, stubbornly, kept drifting back to the young man. The calluses on his hands, the deep calm in his voice, the simple dignity of his departure. She'd had everything. Or so she'd believed, until her own company had voted to remove her from the CEO position her father had painstakingly built for her. They'd called it a graceful transition. She'd called it betrayal. But none of them, not her investors, not the tech blogs, understood what true grace looked like. Jaden had shown her. 2 days later, she found herself retracing the route, past the forgotten gas station, along the familiar rock ridge, her pace slowing at every shoulder, her eyes scanning for that distinctive silhouette. Ridiculous, she chided herself. Yet, an insistent current pulled her onward. At the very edge of town, beyond a row of weather-beaten mailboxes and a sagging fence, she saw him. Jaden was perched on a ladder, diligently hammering nails into a decaying awning above an elderly woman's porch. She parked, stepped out, and watched. He didn't notice her at first, not until the old woman below called out, "You've got company, dearie." Jaden turned, blinked, then offered a cautious, curious smile. "Mr. Brooks." Sienna began, her voice betraying a terrible lie. "I was just in the neighborhood." He climbed down. "Everything all right with the tire?" "Perfect," she confirmed. "But I never properly thanked you," he shrugged. "You already did." She looked at the battered porch, the glinting nails, the precarious ladder. "You do this often?" "Sometimes people need a hand," he said simply, "and I like working with mine." A comfortable silence settled between them, the wind whispering by, carrying the faint scent of cedar and dust. Something unspoken passed between them. Perhaps recognition, perhaps a nascent respect. Sienna retrieved a small, chilled bottle of water from her car, their fingers brushing as she handed it to him. She held his gaze. "Thanks," he murmured, unscrewing the cap. "I don't suppose you like coffee?" she asked. He smiled then, a full, unburdened smile she hadn't seen before. "Depends on who's asking." She returned a faint smile. "Someone who's not done driving this road yet." The cafe, nestled between a dusty pawn shop and a derelict video store, hummed with the scent of fried potatoes and the lazy whir of a grimy ceiling fan. Locals hunched over chipped laminate tables, nursing lukewarm coffee, their conversations unhurried, No one paid much attention to the woman in designer jeans and a crisp linen blouse as she slipped into a corner booth. Only the server, whose eyebrow arched slightly at Sienna's polished heels. Sienna offered a polite smile, ordered a black coffee, and sank into the cracked red vinyl. Her gaze drifted to the window, to the street where she'd seen Jaden on his ladder 2 days prior. The image lingered. The hammer in his hand, the strong curve of his back, the quiet focus of a man who sought no accolades. A soft chime announced a new arrival, and a warm gust of air ushered in a familiar silhouette. He was lightly dusted with sawdust, sleeves rolled, hands darkened by honest work. Jaden stepped inside, nodding to the man behind the counter. When he turned and their eyes met, his body stilled for a fraction of a second. Sienna rose, her fingers lightly gripping the back of the booth. "Hey," he offered a polite nod. "Didn't expect to see you again." She gestured to the seat opposite hers. "Join me." Jaden hesitated, then sat slowly, as if unsure if this was a snare or a jest. "I don't usually do coffee breaks with millionaires. I don't usually chase down mechanics," she retorted, a smirk playing on her lips. He chuckled, a low sound. "I'm not really a mechanic. You fix things," she stated simply. "You fixed me." Jaden tilted his head, unsure how to respond. "You were just stuck, that's all. Sometimes being stuck is more perilous than being broken," she said quietly. Their coffees arrived. He stirred sugar into his, watching her through narrowed eyes. "So," he began after a pause, "why are you really here?" Sienna exhaled, glancing out the window. "Honestly, I don't know. I was driving and I just ended up here again." He leaned back. "You're not accustomed to being curious without a reason, are you?" She met his gaze. "I'm not used to someone walking away from me." Jaden looked down at his cup. "People like me don't usually get asked to stay." A silence settled, heavy but not bitter, a quiet acknowledgement of unspoken burdens. "I grew up in a home where nothing ever stayed fixed," he finally said. "Mom left. Dad drank. My aunt held things together with duct tape and prayer. So, I learned early. If something's broken and you can't replace it, you'd better learn to fix it, and you never ask for help," she queried. "I asked this guy," he said with a soft smile, gesturing vaguely. "It's cheaper." She laughed, a genuine, unforced sound. He liked that. He glanced out the window toward the old church. "What about you? What brings a woman like you to a place like this?" Sienna looked away, searching for words. "I lost something," she said at last. "Maybe I never truly had it. I don't know. But when I walked out of the boardroom for the final time, no one looked me in the eye. They just handed me a check and said, 'Thank you for your service,' like I'd been discharged." So Jaden's fingers drummed once on the table. "Sometimes the exit is the best part of the building." She smiled at that. "You're good with words." "I build fences for a living." He shrugged. "Gives you time to think." They sat quietly for a moment, the silence softer now, more familiar. Then Sienna reached into her bag and retrieved a small, leather-bound notebook. She slid it across the table. "What's this?" he asked. "An idea," she explained. "A rough sketch. I've been thinking about a kind of community workshop, tools, mentorship, maybe even training programs. But it needs someone who actually knows how to build things." Jaden didn't touch the notebook. "You barely know me. I know what you did when no one was watching," she countered. "That's more than I can say for most people in my world." He picked up the notebook, turning it in his hands, then opened it slowly. Blue ink, simple drawings, nascent concepts, but the intention was unmistakable. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this," he said. "I'm not sure I am either," she admitted. Their eyes met again. This time neither looked away. Outside, the wind stirred dust across the pavement. Inside, two strangers sat across a table, with nothing but coffee, a shared dream, and a connection too new to name. "Okay," he said finally, his voice low but resolute. "Let's see where this road goes." The Carrington estate lay nestled in the Aspen foothills, a world away from the cracked sidewalks and rusted fences of Jaden's neighborhood. The main house, 3 stories of steel and glass, belonged on the cover of architectural magazines. Spotless windows mirrored a sky almost too perfect to be real. This was a place where every shrub was manicured, every flower bed meticulously contracted. Jaden stood on the front steps, his hands shoved into the pockets of a button-down shirt Sienna had insisted he borrow. It was clean-pressed, unfamiliar, just like the world beyond those imposing double doors. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked from beside him, her voice soft. He shrugged, not looking at her. "Just here for the food." She laughed gently, then reached for the polished brass handle and pushed the door open. Inside, warm light streamed from chandeliers, and laughter echoed off marble floors. Dozens of guests, arrayed in tailored jackets and sequined gowns, mingled around a grand piano, clinking glasses of expensive wine. A jazz trio played a subdued melody. Heads turned as they entered. Sienna's arm brushed his as they walked. "They're just people," she whispered. "No," he replied, his eyes scanning the room. "They're your people." A man in his 50s approached, a practiced smile plastered on his face. "Sienna, finally. We thought you weren't coming." His eyes flickered briefly toward Jaden, then back to her. "And you brought a guest. This is Jaden Brooks," she stated firmly. "He's helping me with a new project." The man did not offer his hand. "Charmed," he said flatly, before turning back to his drink. The warmth in the room felt suddenly colder. Jaden stepped aside, letting Sienna drift into conversations with the effortless grace of someone born into a world of highball glasses and casual authority. He gravitated toward the edge of the room, pausing by a long table laden with hors d'oeuvres he couldn't pronounce. He reached for a toothpick, skewering something that looked like meat, then hesitated and took a cracker instead. "You're not from around here, are you?" A sneering voice cut through the air. He turned. A young man, perhaps mid-30s, in a crisp blazer, drink in hand, wore a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Excuse me." "Relax, just making conversation," the man drawled. "Sienna tends to bring home projects." Jaden's jaw tightened. "She didn't bring home anything." The man chuckled. "Easy. I'm just saying. She's known for picking up lost causes, dogs, startups, strangers." Before Jaden could respond, a quiet voice cut through the noise. "Is there a problem here, Sienna?" The man straightened. "No problem. Just chatting with your friend here." Sienna's eyes locked onto him, ice behind her smile. "Then find someone else to chat with." The man walked away, muttering into his drink. Jaden turned to her. "That's what this is to them," he said, his voice flat. "A show. A charity case." She looked embarrassed. "He's a jerk." "Yeah, but he's not the only one staring." "They don't matter." "They matter to you," he said quietly. "And I don't." She didn't answer. He stepped away from her, out through the side door and onto the terrace. The night air hit him like a cold truth. He leaned on the railing, looking out over miles of darkness punctuated by distant lights. A few seconds later, she followed. "I didn't think it'd be like this," she said. He didn't look at her. "Didn't think I'd be on display. I wanted you here." "Yeah. Or did you want to feel better about yourself?" That stung. She said nothing. He finally turned. His voice was steady, but low. "I'm not angry you're rich. I'm angry that you thought bringing me here would make anything easier for either of us. You think I don't see it too?" She snapped. "The way they look at me since I left the company, like I'm broken, like I lost my edge. And yeah, maybe I brought you here because I wanted them to see something good I found outside of their world." He stared at her. "Turns out," she said bitterly, "you don't want to be seen either." Silence. Heavy and real. Then he said softer, "I've spent my life blending in so I wouldn't get hurt." She stepped closer. "I'm not here to hurt you, Jaden. Then don't parade me." That landed. They stood inches apart now. No music, no voices, just the hum of a landscape they both suddenly felt alien to. He glanced away. "You don't know what it's like walking into a room and waiting to be called the mistake." She exhaled. "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to stand in one and not know who I am anymore." For a moment, the distance between them didn't feel like money or race or history. Just two people trying not to drown. He looked at her again. "I should go." She nodded, eyes glassy. "Okay." He stepped past her, paused, then without turning. "It wasn't the food. I came for you." And he walked into the night. The afternoon sun beat down on the gravel lot outside Thompson Hardware, where the scent of cut lumber and machine oil hung thick in the air. Jaden stood under the shade of a half-assembled shed, hands deep in a box of bolts, pretending not to hear the car that rolled up behind him. He knew the engine by now, smooth, precise, foreign. Sienna stepped out, having swapped her heels for low boots, her hair tied back, her face flushed, but not from the heat. Jaden didn't look up. "Lost again?" "I was in the area." "You rich folks are always in the area when you want something," he said, his tone dry, but not unkind. She took a few slow steps closer, stopping just short of the tools spread across the workbench. "I'm not here for a fight." "Good," he muttered. "I'm tired of those." I wanted to say I'm sorry. That caught him. He glanced sideways. "For what?" "For thinking I'd enjoy being a curiosity in your world. For putting you there," she said. "And for not stopping that night when you clearly wanted to leave." Jaden sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. It wasn't about leaving. It was about being seen the wrong way. Sienna looked around. The dust, the wood, the open sky. It was a world far from Carrington Estates and curated guest lists. "I brought you into my space," she said. "But I never gave you room to breathe." He finally looked at her. "Why do you care so much?" Her voice cracked just slightly. 'Cause you're the first person in years who looked at me without expectation or judgment. You just saw me. That silenced him. And when I lost everything that made people return my calls, when I couldn't walk into my own boardroom without whispers, you were the one who reminded me I still had worth. Jaden folded his arms, guarded. So now I'm your emotional crutch. No, she said. You're my mirror. The one thing in my life that's been honest. A breeze stirred the dust around their feet. Somewhere behind them, a table saw whirred to life. She reached into her bag, pulled out the notebook she'd once shown him. It was worn now, creased at the corners, filled with new pages. I kept working on it. The community workshop idea, mentorship, vocational training. It's not a pitch, it's real. He took it, thumbed through the pages in silence. You don't have to say yes, she added. But I want you to know I meant every word. Jaden closed the notebook slowly. Why me? She smiled, eyes wet but steady. Because you don't need to be rich to be extraordinary. For the first time since the night on the terrace, he let himself truly look at her. Beyond the wealth, beyond the chaos she came from. Just her. He nodded once. All right. I'll help you build it, he said. But on one condition. What? You stop apologizing for loving something real. Sienna blinked, then laughed, soft, grateful. Deal. Later that week, they sat across from each other on the tailgate of an old pickup truck parked at the edge of the lot. Plans spread between them, coffee in hand, dusk bleeding into the mountains. Jaden pointed at one of the blueprints. You drew this electrical setup backwards. Sienna frowned. No, I didn't. He raised an eyebrow. She sighed. Fine, maybe I did. He smirked. You're lucky I'm patient. I'm lucky for a lot of things lately. She sipped her coffee, eyes on the horizon. They're gonna come after me again, the board, the press. They'll think this is a vanity project. It's not. They'll say I'm throwing money at a boy I barely know. Jaden shrugged. Then let them say it. As she looked at him. You're not afraid. I've been underestimated my whole life. It doesn't scare me anymore, but it does fuel me. Silence again. But this time it wasn't tense. It was sturdy, like something being built. Then he added almost casually, you're not the only one who lost something. As she turned toward him. I lost faith a long time ago, he said, in people, in fairness, in second chances. But you showing up every time, that started something. Her voice softened. What did it start? He looked at her, really looked at her. Hope. The Denver Civic Convention Center shimmered under the late spring sun, its glass panels gleaming like armor. Inside, rows of seats filled with tech investors, media personalities, and startup darlings buzzed with anticipation. A massive LD screen behind the stage pulsed with corporate logos and a scrolling agenda of the afternoon speakers. Sienna stood in the wings, microphone clipped, palms damp. You don't have to do this, her assistant whispered. Yes, I do, she said, her voice firm. They need to see it. All of it. She adjusted her blazer, matte black, sharply cut, and stepped forward as her name was announced to polite applause. Please welcome Sienna Taylor, founder of Elevate Tech and former CEO of Carrington Green. Jaden watched from the back row, his posture rigid beneath a borrowed blazer. His work boots didn't match the expensive suits around him, but he didn't care. He was here because she'd asked him to be. No, because he wanted to be. He knew what today meant. He knew the vultures were circling. Sienna approached the podium slowly. The lights blinded her momentarily, but she didn't flinch. She looked across the sea of faces, then down at her notes. She didn't read them. I'm not here to talk about market projections, she began, or IPOs or exit strategies. A murmur of confusion rippled across the audience. I'm here to talk about what happens when we lose sight of people in pursuit of profit. When we trade integrity for influence. When we silence the voices that don't wear suits. Now the murmurs sharpened. You all know I left Carrington Green. What you don't know is why. Behind her. The screen flickered. A photo appeared, not of spreadsheets or solar panels, but of a tool-strewn workbench, of hands gripping wood, of a young man showing children how to build something from scratch. I left because the people I worked with stopped listening. They stopped believing that innovation comes from unexpected places. She took a breath. Last month, I brought a young man, Jaden Brooks, to one of my industry events. You probably read the articles, the comments, the assumptions. A long pause. Her throat tightened, but she pushed through. What none of you saw was what I saw. A builder, a teacher, a man with more wisdom than some of the executives I sat beside for 10 years. She looked toward the crowd, toward Jaden, even if she couldn't discern his face. I love him. The room went silent, not shocked, but stunned. And if that costs me your funding, your respect, or your invitation to next year's keynote, so be it. Gasps, phones raised, the silence shattered like glass. She smiled, just barely. Because I'd rather build something honest with him than keep pretending with any of you. Then she walked off stage. Backstage, her assistant looked pale. Sienna, the press. Let them write, she said, pulling off the mic. I gave them something worth writing. A few feet behind her, Jaden stood frozen in the hallway, having made his way there as soon as the speech ended. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. I know you could lose everything. She walked toward him. Then let me lose it with intention. He looked at her, eyes heavy but alive. You meant it? He asked. All of it. She stepped closer. Every word. They stood inches apart in the hallway, in the eye of the storm. Then I'm staying, he said. A beat passed. Then her voice soft, cracking. Good. That night, the internet ignited. Headlines flared like wildfire. Sienna Taylor declares love for unknown builder at Tech Summit. CEO walks away from fortune for a man with dirt under his nails. The backlash was swift. Investors pulled out of her community project. Former board members issued statements distancing themselves. But something else happened, too. Letters arrived, emails, handwritten notes from teachers, veterans, welders, grandmothers, stories of people who were seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. And among them, one letter stood out. It was from a 12-year-old girl in Detroit. My brother says I can't build things because I'm a girl, but you showed them on that stage. You built something brave. Sienna read the note aloud to Jaden under a sky full of stars, sitting on the porch of the new workshop they were building together. He leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. She gets it, he said. Sienna nodded. Yeah, she does. He turned to her. You know, you didn't just break their silence. What do you mean? You broke mine. 1 year later, the morning sun stretched long across the gravel driveway of the newly completed workshop, just outside Grand Junction, Colorado. Where an abandoned warehouse once stood, now rose a beautiful, clean lined structure clad in pinewood and corrugated steel. Its large front windows were etched with the words, Brooks and Taylor Institute Skills, Dignity, Future. Inside, the scent of sawdust and fresh paint mingled with the aroma of brewed coffee and cinnamon rolls donated by a local bakery. Rows of benches lined the workshop where young men and women, black, white, Latino, Navajo, laughed, drilled, measured, and built. Jaden stood at the head of the room wearing jeans, a dark blue shirt, and an apron streaked with chalk. He leaned over a table, demonstrating how to cut a dovetail joint with precision. Every student watched him, not with obligation, but with admiration. He no longer felt out of place in front of a crowd. He was home. Sienna stood by the entrance, greeting community leaders, donors, and old friends. She looked different, not in wealth or status, but in presence, grounded, clear. The phone in her purse buzzed every few minutes with missed calls and press requests, but she didn't glance at it once. Outside, guests gathered around a podium framed by 2 American flags and a backdrop of young trees planted the previous spring. Jaden stepped up to the mic, adjusting it carefully, his hands surprisingly steady. He looked out at the faces, familiar and new, and exhaled. I used to believe that some people were just born to stay small. He began. That no matter how good you were, how hard you worked, there were places you'd never be invited into. He paused. And then I met someone who didn't invite me in. She walked out of the door herself, sat beside me, and listened. Sienna's eyes shone. Several people dabbed tears. She didn't hand me a ladder. She handed me tools, he said. And together we built something bigger than either of us. He nodded toward the building behind him. This place isn't just for kids who want to learn how to build a table. It's for anyone who's been told they don't belong. It's for the ones who fix things quietly, who don't wear suits, who know the value of calloused hands. He smiled, his voice low but resonant. It's for the ones like me. Applause erupted, but he didn't move. He let the moment breathe. Then he added, with that signature pause of his, we named it Brooks and Taylor. But the truth is, this house doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the future. Later that afternoon, when the crowd had thinned and the sun dipped low, Jaden and Sienna sat side by side on the back steps of the building, watching a few kids chase each other across the field behind them. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You nailed it. I didn't stutter, he teased. Nope. You just turned every grown man into a puddle. He laughed, but there was something deeper in the sound, something healed. Do you ever miss it? He asked. The old world. Sienna shook her head. Not for a second. I didn't lose power. I just found a better way to use it. He nodded. You remember what you said to me a year ago after that conference? Which part? That loving something real was worth losing everything else. She looked up at him. Yeah. He held up her hand, kissed her knuckles. You were right. That evening, as dusk softened the edges of the sky, The workshop glowed from within. Light spilled from its tall windows, laughter echoed from inside, the clatter of hammers and dreams. An old pickup pulled up slowly along the side of the road. Mrs. Temple, the retired school librarian, rolled down her window and looked out with misty eyes. She'd lived in this town her whole life. They'd unturned a scrapyard into a sanctuary, she whispered to herself. She wasn't wrong. Inside, Jaden helped a student line up a drill. Easy pressure. Let the tool do the work. The boy looked up. You ever get scared? Jaden smiled. All the time. So, how do you know you're doing the right thing? He thought for a second, then said, when it feels like you're building something bigger than yourself, and it scares you just enough to mean something. That's how. The bell above the workshop door jingled. Sienna walked in, holding a small framed photo. She handed it to Jaden. Inside the frame was a picture of him taken from behind teaching a class. On the frame in careful script were the words, "Love builds." He looked at it, then at her. Where do we hang it? She smiled. At the heart.